Hello everyone. Today I will give you a brief introduction on Pan-Africanism. So I'm translating from French here. So Pan-Africanism is a historical enigma and its conception and where it was actually birthed varies. There's so many divergence on its functionality, who actually sort of defined it as an idea, as an ideology. And it started with its true definition, because I'm translating from French to English, so it's not always easy. Its true definition varies between, it sort of lies between a philosophical concept, and it was around the time of the abolition of slavery happening in the Caribbean, like South America, especially Brazil, around that time, and also the United States. And social political movements started to emerge and to develop, especially by African Americans, the Antillians, the Caribbeans, so to speak. And between and towards the end of the 19th century, and also towards the end of the Second World War, where a doctrine of unity started to sort of become a bit more concrete, by African nationalists, especially when they were struggling for independence. So the source of Pan-Africanism as an idea was born, in a sense, with Africans being deported from the motherland all the way to the New World, and it stems from that. The sort of willingness and the struggle to free themselves from the shackles of slavery and bondage. It became like a vagabond history. That's why, for me, Pan-Africanism did not truly start within Africa. It started in the diaspora, and the diaspora has always, since slavery, always played a major role in actually formulating, organizing politically, socially, sometimes economically, to sort of help people back on the African continent. So you have to understand that even when the struggle for independence across the African continent was happening around the 1960s for a lot of African countries, some of them started in the 70s, some of Ghana's the first African country that was independent, south of the Sahara, 1957. So when those countries started to become independent politically, almost 2 years later, they created the Organization for African Unity, the AOU, it was called. OUA, Organization for African Unity, sorry. And when they started that movement, it wasn't an innocent sort of creation. It was the struggles from Marcus Garvey, from Toussaint Louverture, from Dessalines, from Walter Rodney, from Frederick Douglass, W.E. Du Bois, Malcolm X, Dr. King, Kwame, all these guys. It was a struggle from them, especially, that sort of influenced African nationalists to take up arms or to protest, to to organize some sort of civil disobedience within the colonies. So whether it's from Ghana, Nigeria, Ivory Coast to a certain extent, Kenya, Namibia, Angola, the inspiration came from that. It came from the Caribbean, it came from North America. And because the diaspora played a major role in sort of inspiring a new generation of young African leaders to actually create a whole new other movement. Because within Pan-Africanism, you have so many like stages. I wouldn't say branches, but so many stages of nation building. Some, like, I'll give you two examples. You have someone like Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. He wanted to have the United States of Africa like that, and you had someone from Tanzania like Julius Nyerere. He was against the idea of creating a United States of Africa. He said it doesn't make sense. We needed to sort of move progressively, block by block. So within the continent, you had sort of divergences of people who felt that it wasn't the right time to do certain things, and they were content to stay within their own artificial colonial borders, the one that the Europeans sort of left behind. And then they said, okay, the country that we sort of drew the borders off at the Berlin Conference between, if my memory serves me right, between 1886 and 1889, to literally sort of cut up the African continent like a piece of cake. We had to sort of live with those borders that did not take into account our ethno-linguistic differences. They just decided, okay, Ashantis will go over there, Yorubas, you stay over there, Baule people, you go over there, Bambara, you Wolof, you stay on one side. So it was a bit weird. And even at the African Union, that's the sort of the predecessor of the African Union. They had this clause saying that we shouldn't change the borders. It was called, in French, they call it l'intangibilité des frontières. So we mustn't change the borders, otherwise it would create other problems much worse. And a lot of African leaders, when they came, they were so content in staying within their own colonial hybrid construct, instead of actually going towards real unity by encouraging certain measures, like economic integration, like trade integration, stuff like that. They didn't really encourage it. They just stayed on like, I have a title. I can travel overseas, and they can call me His Excellency, Mr. President. So, they had this sort of colonial syndrome, sadly, and they did not see the sort of how can I say, the long-lasting legacy of their indecision. Today we're still paying for it, so the history of Pan-Africanism is very long, it's complicated. So it's still we're still sort of trying to discover ourselves within the diaspora. I'm part of the diaspora. I grew up in Ivory Coast, so I'm I get it. We all have this sort of relationship with the countries of our parents, and we aspire to go back to, but because there's so much corruption, there's so many barriers that sometimes my mom would tell me it's not a good time to go because the elections are happening soon, and I don't want you to die, like because elections are, it's a bit funny over there when you have elections, and we all have this aspiration to go back one day to build. Do you understand? I'm from a generation that I was lucky enough to have the right education, the right information, not the right education, but the right information at a time where I was quite young, and I understood the importance of having something to go back to. Like if I was to go back to Ivory Coast right now, I would be, in my own house, and I'll have my own farm. Like, you understand? So you have something to fall back on. It was very important to sort of invest over there, and other people, their relationship to the African continent was through TV, media, and because they grew up in Europe, they grew up in North America, the only thing they know about Africa is poverty. And I actually grew up over there, so I know that it's not the case. Like, we have our problems, but saying that it's only poverty, that's not true. And it's quite important to actually encourage the younger generation to, even though I'm not saying everybody should just pack up and leave. That's what I'm saying. Just like, at least go there and see for yourself what it's like, and your mindset will change. So yeah, people. I have a lot of projects like going on, but I have two main projects that I'm currently working on, and hopefully one day I'll be able to develop them when I actually land there and start to do certain things. I've always had my mind set on returning. How I'm going to return is still a question mark. It's a question mark for a lot of us. Some people are a bit more fortunate than others to actually pack up and just go. Other people can't really just go because they have children, they have their career, they have their house, their mortgage, so you can't just leave. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. Like, we live in a globalized world, a globalized system, so if Chinese people can live in Africa and also go back to China, there's no reason why a Nigerian can't live in China and go back to, can't work in China and go back to Nigeria every now and then. So, it's open. French people work in Singapore, but they still go back to France. Americans are in, I don't know, Kenya or somewhere, they still go back to the United States. There's no reason why Africans can't do it. So, Pan-Africanism right now, in a sense that, in light of all the recent events, is gaining momentum, and people are aware of much more things than they were before. So it's a movement, it's a fluid movement. It's going to continue to sort of develop and grow, whether politically, economically, culturally, it's going to grow. Like recently we saw in Ghana, they had the Year of the Return. That was a cultural movement, and it's a statement, not just to Africans worldwide, but to the diaspora. It's like, Africa's open for business, so come back home. And yeah, that was me. I'll give you another follow-up video on Pan-Africanism in 2020, and going on from 2020 all the way to 2050 or 2100. So yeah.